The annual cash inflows of the project are the revenues generated from power generation. This was determined by approximating the annual energy output in kilowatt hours, assuming a 35% capacity factor and operations of 24 hours a day for 365 days for each of the 26 5-megawatt wind turbines. A contract price of 4.1 cents per kilowatt hour was assumed based on a comparable recent contract of TransAlta for its Windrise wind project. The annual cash inflows of 16 million were determined by multiplying the 4.1 cents per kilowatt hour to the annual energy production of approximately 400 million kilowatt hours. For the cash outflows of the project, the main cash outflow is the initial capital expenditure, which makes up 81% of the total costs. The total operating and maintenance costs were assumed to be 0.5 cents per kilowatt hour, totaling around 2 million annually. The total O&M costs were then separated into its individual categories based on the percentage breakdown and cost structure of the average wind turbine. As such, the annual earnings from before taxes were approximately 14 million, which is consistent with TransAlta's estimations. An 8% Alberta corporate tax rate was then used to determine the after-tax earnings. Furthermore, it was assumed that at the end of the 18-year contract, the wind turbines would be decommissioned. A relevant cost, which is the decommissioning cost per wind turbine, was assumed to be 400,000, totaling 10 million at year 18. This was determined by using a comparable project called the Palmer's Creek Wind Facility that has been decommissioned recently. A discount factor of 7.5% was used based on the 2020 IRENA power generation report for OECD countries. Overall, an NPV of 30 million and payback of about 7 years for the project was determined, suggesting a sound investment for TransAlta.
We have also conducted a sensitivity analysis factoring the impact on NPV by changing input factors. It was identified that the sales prices, electricity generation, and capacity factors would be the most influential items that the company may want to keep a close look at when implementing the project. Another factor we considered was levelized cost of electricity, which is a measure of the cost of electricity generation of a wind turbine over its lifetime. This is determined by measuring the NPV of cost of electricity generation over that of the energy produced over its lifetime. It was determined to be 3 cents per kilowatt hour compared to the Canadian average of 7 cents, indicating cost efficiency and profitability of the project compared to the industry average. So in conclusion, it is evident that the project is worth investing for the reasons mentioned above.
Now let's discuss this issue 2 concerning keep or drop decision. For background, TransAlta fully owns 3 mines, Highvale and Whitewood in Alberta and Centralia in Washington. While Highvale will be retired by 2022, Whitewood and Centralia mines have been out of service since 2010 and 2006, respectively. These properties also house coal burning units where Highvale has 3 units of Keep Hills and Sundance 4. Whitewood houses Sundance 5 and 6, while Centralia has its unit 1 and 2. Though the mines have been retired for 15 years due to government intervention, Centralia Thermal Coal Unit 1 was recently retired in 2020, with Unit 2 planned to retire in 2025, and remaining site reclamation obligations are 72%. For the decisions available, we are aware that in March of this year, TransAlta was in talks with the Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife to discuss possibly donating the Centralia land to eventually become a conservation area. However, we were also aware that in February of 2021, Whitewood Sundance 6, a similar coal burning unit to Centralia, was successfully converted to run on natural gas. We believe the same could be achieved at Centralia. This brings us to the decision of whether to keep or drop Centralia. Using Sundance 6's cost as a guide, we determined the key factors applicable to the conversion of Centralia Unit 1, adjusting estimates where necessary. For example, comparing the capacities, we found an adjusting factor of 1.67. This was applied to adjust for the size and length of the project as well as the costs. Further, as Sundance 6 is conservatively estimated to have a productive life of 10 years and did not lose capacity in the transition, we assume the same for Unit 1. And finally, for the donation, we assume TransAlta will make a clean break from its decommissioning liabilities, completely transferring the liability to the WDFW, as is common practice in M&A transactions in the energy sector. When looking at the quantitative aspect of keeping and converting Unit 1, we assume that as its capacity would not change, it would produce an equivalent amount of revenue as 2020, as energy prices are the same regardless of its source being gas or coal. We also assume that the fuel cost would resemble the same percentage of revenue as the fuel cost for North American natural gas in 2020 to give 68 million. As the capacity remains the same, the operating, maintenance, and admin costs would also remain the same as the 2020 figure being 30 million. And finally, as the cost of upgrades in the boiler conversion were specifically associated with the conversion of Sundance 6, we adjusted these using the 1.67 factor to calculate the annual cost of 8 million and the one-time cost of 58 million. As a result of these revenues and costs, the conversion of Unit 1 would result in an effective profit of 76.55 million in its first revenue generating year, accounting for the investment in the boiler, and further result in a recurring nominal profit of 135 million in the subsequent years. Qualitatively, the benefits of the conversion include the utilization of idle infrastructure, extending its useful life, and creating job opportunities lost when Unit 1 was retired. This also aligns with TransAlta's mission to provide electricity through clean energy due to the use of natural gas, which releases half of the emissions per megawatt hour compared to coal. Less emissions, though, are still more than no CO2 emissions that would occur with the land donation. And further, the unit is estimated to take 3.3 years to convert, meaning cash flow won't be realized until 2025, the earliest.
With respect to the options to drop and donate to WDFW, the quantitative include recurring property tax savings and savings in the first year from dropping the remaining decommissioning liability due to the clean break. As a result, the first year savings will be amount to 179 million, whereas subsequent years will be seen at 5 million from property tax savings. Qualitatively, the benefit includes environmental aspects of land being put towards creating habitats for endangered species such as the western pond turtle. This would also align with its sustainability commitments. However, the disadvantages are prominent as this donation could result in public backlash rather than enhancing their image. Articles already exist where people comment on TransAlta's motives for donation, speculating they only care about saving implications using the veil of sustainability. But even if there's also people who believe TransAlta's intent is to help the environment, unfortunately, this would not translate to more sales as one would hope. With this industry, market brand loyalty is not a significant factor in sales as low costs. So what do we recommend? We believe that TransAlta should keep its land to convert Unit 1 to run on natural gas. Though it may seem as though a donation is significantly more profitable in the first year, in subsequent years when the decommissioning savings is no longer a factor, nominal increases in profit over savings is massive, being 5 million compared to 135 million over many years. In relation to the qualitative aspect, we believe the benefits outweigh the disadvantages as well. For example, the conversion from reviving Unit 1, creating an estimated of 300 permanent jobs and 400 contracts, aiding the economy and further supplementing more access to clean electricity. Though the emissions are more than if the land was donated, the amount is still significantly less than the previous year. And further, though the project will result in a cash flow for 3.3 years, it's apparent that TransAlta is not in need for a quick, small amount of cash as their cash flows currently are strong. The company would benefit from more substantial return over long term, facilitating growth in its expanding ventures.
In conclusion, we recognize that TransAlta strives to provide safe, low-cost, and reliable clean energy. We analyzed 2 sustainability energy projects of TransAlta. Firstly, we evaluated the Garden Plain project investment and conducted an NPV analysis. It was determined that TransAlta should pursue the project based on the NPV of 30 million, payback period of 7 years, and low levelized cost of energy, which supports its mission. In addition, we analyzed the Centralia Mine project, comparing dropping and donating or keeping and converting the site. We have concluded that TransAlta should keep the Centralia site and convert it to run on natural gas, as the company would be generating more profits in subsequent years compared to the cost savings by donating. These 2 recommendations align with TransAlta's commitment to uphold sustainability. Thank you for listening, and that concludes our presentation.